Liberty is a promise of many political ideologies, but one in particular carries liberty in its name: liberalism. Especially dominant among highly developed countries, liberalism has been very diverse, with many iterations over time. Liberals are broadly in pursuit of the ever-elusive concept of freedom, but different liberal movements have sharply disagreed on how freedom should be defined and how it should be implemented, and what role the government should take in private matters, economic affairs, and social welfare. In general, it seems to be the case that the core themes of liberalism are the individual, freedom, reason, justice, and toleration. But as we shall see, the meaning and importance of each of these principles has been in flux.
Today, I would like to start our group presentation by explaining about the introduction of liberalism. The founder of liberalism was an English philosopher and physician known as John Locke. John Locke is considered one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers and is also called the father of liberalism. Liberalism was established in the 17th century. The purpose of establishment liberalism is to replace inherited privilege, state, religion, absolute monarchy, the king, divine right, and conventional conservatism with democratic representation, the rule of law, and equality under the law. Liberalism can be defined as a positive way of human nature, the inevitability of social growth, and a balance of interests, social, political, and economic philosophy. According to David Sidosky, liberalism is the first understanding of man as desiring freedom and capable of exercising rational free choice. In addition, liberalism contains a variety of concepts and arguments about how institution, behavior, and economic connection contain and mitigate the violent power of states. It contains moral argument that ensuring that the right of an individual person to life, liberty, and property is the highest goal of the government.
Next, let us move on to the main principles of liberalism theory on the international relation perspective. First and foremost, the democratic peace theory. The democratic peace theory proposes that democracies are less likely to engage in armed conflicts with each other. This notion is rooted in the belief that democracies share common values, respect human rights, and operate with transparent governance, which in turn promotes diplomacy over conflict. A prime example of this theory in action can be found in the relationship between the United States and Canada. Both nations uphold democratic principles, and their history is a testament to the power of democracy in maintaining peaceful relations. The absence of military conflicts and the strong economic ties between the two nations showcase how democracies tend to avoid war and instead opt for peaceful means of conflict resolutions. Next, the interdependence and cooperation. The concept of interdependence and cooperation is a cornerstone of liberal international relations theory. It argues that countries engaged in trade, diplomacy, and international organization create a web of mutual reliance that discourages war. A notable illustration of this theory is the European Union (EU), in which the members have achieved a remarkable level of economic integration and share common regulations. This deep interdependence makes war impractical as it would disrupt the complex economic and political relationship within the Union. Furthermore, the EU has established institutions and mechanisms for conflict resolution, reinforcing the idea that cooperation and diplomacy are the preferred means of resolving disputes. The European Union serves as a prime example of how interdependence and cooperation can contribute to lasting peace in a region that was once ravaged by war. Last but not least, the balance of power. The balance of power emphasizes that international stability is attained when major states ensure its rough equilibrium in terms of power and matches it. The theory suggests that when no single state becomes overwhelmingly dominant, it discourages aggression and fosters stability. There are several strategies in maintaining balance of power. The first one is contain conflicts, where power can prevent any spread of conflict that existed. Next, limited retaliation. Retaliation by nations against other nations should be limited to what is required to protect their own security and sovereignty. Lastly, strong military alliances by the nation is needed in order to prevent any international aggression. Thus, this proves that the balance of power theory highlights how the strategic distribution of power can be a vital factor in preserving peace in the international system.
Before we go further about liberalism against realism, let's take a look at this short video.
Not surprisingly then, liberals tend to have a fairly optimistic outlook on the international system. They believe it's possible to construct international institutions and rules that will help prevent conflict and promote cooperation between states. Realists, on the other hand, tend to have a more pessimistic outlook on international politics. They argue that the best we can hope for is stability as states act to expand their own power and protect their national interests.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NURUL and BINTI JUSOH. So right now, we'll move to the analysis of liberalism. So today, I'll be comparing about these two theories, which are liberalism and realism. So let's move ahead. Do you believe that global affairs are characterized by cooperation where states realize the power of working together to solve global problems? After all, we have numerous trade agreements, regional organizations, and the United Nations that all encourage states to work together. Or do you believe that the international system runs on the principle of every man for himself, as Thucydides once said that the strong do what they can and the weak do what they must? On the other hand, liberals see the world as one of cooperation over competition, where states that work together grow stronger together. To enable this cooperative system, liberals will stress the importance of liberal institutions. In part, this means the support of ideas like free trade and organizations like the United Nations that promote peaceful relations between states. A major belief of liberalism in international relations is the concept of the democratic peace theory that argues liberal democracies are so alike in interests and values and see mutual benefit in cooperation. It makes conflict less likely. After all, why go to war with a trading partner where you see the mutual benefit of that economic cooperation? Realism has long been one of the most prominent theoretical foundations in global politics and traditionally focuses solely on the sovereign state. This focuses on the state system's true foundational beliefs in the anarchic nature of the international system, meaning there is no power above the state making, and everything that happens in the international realm unregulated and uncertain. For the realist, you can never trust anyone and you can only rely on yourself. So this constant accumulation of power acts as a means of protection and security. Due to this anarchic state, realists argue that states are constantly seeking power for survival. First, let's think about power. Liberalism has a strong focus on soft power over hard power. While liberals acknowledge war might be necessary to pursue liberal interests, if we're past this necessity of preparing for it, let's look at ways we can use power to bring states together instead of driving them apart. Sure, some major powers like the United States might still need a strong military to keep the peace, as it were. But for the rest of us, let's use that money towards economic and social progress. If we focus on collectively tackling global issues, let's use all the tools at our disposal to help make that happen. Liberals look to empower and give more legitimacy to non-state actors like NGOs that helping in fighting global injustices. And major global issues like climate change won't be solved in a world of states constantly growing their own power at the expense of others. Let's also consider the European Union one of the greatest success of liberalism in action. The economic power wielded by the common market with all the EU states joining forces has ushered in tremendous economic growth. In contrast, realism aligns itself with hard power and what realists often refer to as capabilities. These capabilities are things such as geographic territory and demographic power and most commonly military force and advanced military technology, all of which allow you to stay ahead of the enemy and mitigate the risk attack or invasion. Take the United States for example. While economic and social progress are important, the United States remains one of the most powerful countries in the world, and this is due to its ability to maintain a full spectrum capability, meaning that it has high capability across all hard power assets, not because it acts cooperatively with international institutions. In fact, some might say that it's done the opposite of that in recent years. And that's all from me. I'll pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Next, we will be moving to the impact of liberalism towards international relations. The impact can be divided into two categories, which are the positive impacts and the negative impacts. First of all, I am going to share about the positive impacts of liberalism towards international relations, which is the establishment of European Union. Why I say so? This is because institutional liberalism helps to facilitate activities that are beneficial to states such as trade, reduce transnational fears that can result in tensions, and provides a flow of information as well as opportunities to negotiate between states in the event of tensions over armed controls or economics, thus strengthening the relationship between union countries. From peace and security to global power, the European Union gives benefits to improving people's daily life. European citizens can travel and work freely throughout the European Union, strengthening their ties. European institution offers a platform for European citizens to voice their opinions and debate policies that affect them. The organization also plays a significant role when it comes to diplomacy. It promotes security and prosperity, stability, fundamental freedoms, and democracy internationally. As the leading donor of humanitarian aid, the organization is committed to providing help to man-made and natural disaster victims.
The next positive impact of liberalism towards international relations is it can be one of an effective way to get states to interact with each other honestly and support non-violent solutions to certain problems. Liberals believe that with the right institutions and diplomacy, states can collaborate to maximize wealth and minimize war. It is because liberalism often highlights the democratic peace theory, which suggests that democracies are less likely to go to war with each other. By promoting democracy and the protection of human rights, liberal states can contribute to a more peaceful international environment. Democratic peace theory does not claim that democracies are generally more peaceful than non-democracies. However, the theoretical claim that democracies rarely go to war with each other is widely held to be true by international relations experts and is further supported by history. However, liberalism also has its own negative impacts. Scholars in the field of international relations have different perspectives or opinion on liberalism, and they often offer varying critiques and interpretations of liberal theory. Here are some of the different perspectives among scholars regarding liberalism in international relations. Firstly, realist critique. Realist scholars argue that liberalism's emphasis on cooperation and international institutions is overly optimistic. They contend that states primarily act in their self-interest and power politics and competitions are more prevalent in international relations than liberal theory suggests. Realists question the ability of international institutions to constrain state behavior effectively. Secondly, feminist perspective. Feminist scholars often offer criticism of liberalism, arguing that it may not adequately address gender-related issues in international relations. They highlight the need to incorporate a gender perspective into liberal theory and policy.
Next, I
I am going to explain about the negative impacts of liberalism towards international relations, which is the exploitations of trade liberalization. Trade liberalizations promotes free trade, which allows countries to trade goods without regulatory barriers or their associated costs. These reduced regulations decreases costs for countries that trade with other nations and may ultimately result in lower consumer prices because imports are subject to lower fees and competition is likely to increase. However, trade liberalizations can negatively affect certain businesses within a nation because of greater competition from foreign producers and may result in less local support for those industries. There may also be a financial and social risk if products or raw materials come from countries with lower environmental standards. As well as that, trade liberalization can pose a threat to developing nations or economies because they are forced to compete in the same market as stronger economies or nations. This challenge can stifle established local industries or result in the failure of newly developed industries there.
In conclusion, it is clear that liberalism is a very broad and evolving ideology in emphasizing individual rights, limited government democracy, and the rule of law. While these core principles are widely shared among liberals, specific policies and interpretation can differ significantly. Other than that, liberalism it can sometimes lead to economic inequality, excessive individualism, or a lack of social cohesion. Nevertheless, liberalism has played an important role in shaping the modern world and continue to influence political, economic, and social systems globally. Its effectiveness in promoting certain values and principles depends on how it is implemented and adapted in different contexts. The principles of liberalism have contributed to the development of a more peaceful and cooperative international system by providing a framework for countries to engage with each other honestly and peacefully. Lastly, liberalism principles work together to create a framework for understanding how states can interact and maintain peace and stability in the international system by promoting democracy, fostering economic ties, and seeking to prevent the concentration of power. Liberalism aims to reduce the likelihood of violent conflict and encourage peaceful resolution to international dispute.